Hi everyone, I'm Emma.
And I'm Dominique. We run Yellow Door Collective, a full-service marketing agency based in Cape Town, South Africa. Welcome to our podcast, Life Behind the Yellow Door.
When we met almost a decade ago, we had no idea what was in store for us. But we soon realized that common values and aspirations are a solid basis for a partnership.
In this podcast, we'll share some of our journey as entrepreneurs and new generation agency owners in South Africa. What really happens behind the yellow door. We hope to inspire you with honest and authentic conversations about running an agency, the life of being an entrepreneur, and featuring chats with the people who have shaped our world. Welcome to our 4th episode. Thanks for joining us again. In our last episode, we chatted to our leadership coach, Murray Kilgour, and he shared some great wisdom with us on how to grow and develop as individuals and business owners. Do take a listen if you haven't already.
And as you may be starting to gather, relationships are a big deal to us. So today we've roped in Dom's husband, Tristan, and he's going to join us on the podcast.
Hello, everyone.
Tristan's been with us every step of the way, and we're hoping he'll share some of his journey with Yellow Door and also offer some sanity to those of you who are married or close to an entrepreneur. So Trist, welcome. And if you could start by just giving our listeners a little bit of a Tristan 101.
Thank you so much. It's cool to be here. I know that it took a few efforts to get me to join you guys in this room. I am a town planner by day, a listener and a sounding board by evening, and for the rest of the time, I spend a lot of time on my various bicycles, much to Dom's dismay. But yeah, a freelancer to a certain extent, and a self-employed town planner, and similar to how you guys started on the original Yellow Door journey together.
Yeah, I think there's lots of overlaps there, which I'm sure helps in those listening and sharing sessions in the evening. But Trist, maybe you could touch on some of the differences you've noticed in Yellow Door over the last 5 years. I think it's a nice way to enter.
I've been making copious notes all morning instead of doing work that I should be doing. This question's an interesting one because in some ways at Yellow Door everything has changed, and in others the basics are the same. I wrote down an example, which is that your values and your offering has essentially remained the same, which is, I think, a part of why you guys have been able to remain successful over the last 5 years through a relatively, in fact, an incredibly tough economy. But on the other hand, you guys are no longer a 2-woman team. You're employers now, you have staff and interns, and with that comes like a lot of new challenges and requires you guys to think out the box quite a lot, as opposed to just simply being like the drivers and the workers. So in that sense, same but different.
And over the years, you've definitely been roped in various ways, being our photographer and our freelance writer, designing various things over the years.
Furniture maker.
Yes.
Painter.
Trist needs a special mention for the furniture. So in our original office on Whale Street, it was so small, and she used to call it a cupboard, that we needed mini desks. So Trist spent at least a whole weekend designing, buying, building, sanding, and we've still got them today.
Yeah, that's great.
Look, when you guys started out, when you first met and decided that Yellow Door was a good way to join your careers together, it was a bit of a transitionary time for me as well. I was starting a career, and I was still playing some other cards and abilities to earn a living, so I appreciate your guys' time and giving me the ability to do that as well, whilst earning as a professional, but then also like sort of grafting the 2 or 3 other jobs that I was doing. I still read some of those blog posts that I wrote for you guys. I've got them like stashed away on my hard drive in a like written
That's
work
a very
folder.
weird habit, just
Yeah, look, I enjoyed coming on especially for the photography side of things, because I got to kind of meet your guys' team throughout all of its different iterations, yeah, and all of the various personalities that you guys had in the office, just by being there to take a portrait. And it's quite a difficult thing for somebody to come on and like stand in front of a person who they've never known, and have their photo taken.
Especially as we know you so well, so it seems weird that they wouldn't know you.
and what you guys know, what other people probably don't, is that I'm kind of particular about a few things. So kind of. I'd be setting up shots and light and getting things all correct, and you'd be telling them like this will be a quick thing, like get back to work. And I'd be like half an hour later, we'd only be starting to take the photos. Anyway, so that was a cool thing for me to be able to be involved in the office in that sort of sense, but still separate. The design side, yeah, I remember that old square peg logo. I think I drew it up in CAD originally, and then pulled it into Illustrator to try and make it look pretty, and it never ever looked pretty. So it was for me. It was nice to be able to be working, but then also to draw on different passions, which you guys facilitated. So that was rad.
And also to really understand what our offering was being molded into, and I'm sure it's more interesting for you now to chat to us, and to Dom in particular, because you've got that sort of grounding in it.
Yeah, for sure. It was quite a challenge for me to balance your guys' expectations of what you wanted in terms of time and output, and deal with like an ever-changing client brief as well, which I'm sure you guys know like the back of your hands.
Yeah, we do now.
It never changes.
So what are the 3 things you've learned from being close to our journey at Yellow Door over the years?
This is where a bit of prep work definitely comes into play, because now I can sound like these things are just rolling off my tongue. The first thing that I've learned from you guys is that there's no substitute for good old-fashioned hard work. I think that you guys are the epitome of just really grafting and getting things done. The second thing is that sometimes it's worth being a jack of all trades. Mastery is generally lost on most clients. So getting all of those like bits and pieces in and making a client happy is something that resonates with me, and the work that I do as well. And then the last, which is probably a little bit more sort of personal on both of your accounts and on mine too, is that while it's impossible to always be having a good day, working towards having the positive office environment that you guys do try and tender certainly ensures that there's overwhelmingly more good days than bad ones.
Amazing. Thanks, Chris. Dom, do you have a reply?
Amazing 3 things. No.
I think one that I would love to comment on is the second one, that being a jack of all trades, because it's something Dom and I chatted about in the car this morning, is that our current team is really strong and they're all excited to do things out of their sort of traditional job spec or role.
Sure.
And I think it's sort of, for me, coming back full circle to when we started and we just had the 3 of us, the 2 of us and Ash, and we really did roll up our sleeves and get stuck in. So it's great to have a team 5 years later that still wants to do that.
Yeah, for sure. That ability to foster that learning is also great. So don't carry on with that as well. Just tell your staff to just learn. It's going to make them better at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And then I guess this is quite a similar question, but what advice would you share for us, or maybe for listeners, from someone who's close to the action but not in it?
I definitely jumped the gun there with that previous comment. Look, well, I've been trying to get Dom to go to bed before 1 a.m. for the last 14 years. We met in high school, and I mean, Ecos 101 wasn't friendly with Dom, so she's been working hard and into the early hours of the morning for a long time, But maybe
Very
I
true.
should just start giving myself the advice rather than giving you guys the advice.
I was going to say, of the three of us, I'm the only one who goes to bed early.
I try.
I drag
okay?
him down with me.
I try. But on a serious note, I think to both of you, never lose sight of the initial method of success that you guys first used when you got together as Em and Dom, as Get Polished and New Media Marketing. Because, for example, you guys were the workhorses and the directors, for want of a better term at the time. And it was just the two of you that made those clients come back and did the work. And in fact, you both were doing the work and training Ash at the same time. So we know that you can do it. but what the advice that I wanted to give you was that don't ever lose the ability to bounce off one another, to feel comfortable in asking each other questions, because watching other partnerships, my two directors, for example, and Dom's dad and his partners at Pick and Pay, it seems to be a successful trade in partners. And you guys should always keep that in the back of your minds whenever you're making decisions and all of that sort of stuff.
Great advice.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's something we are aware of but need reminding of every once in a while. And as always, you said it very eloquently. So something I've loved over the years is watching your relationship and how Trist plays such a supportive role to Dom as a business owner. I'm often quite jealous, even though I get a lot of that support myself from him too. But Trist, maybe chat through how you support Dom and the challenges that come with that.
Sure. Look, I think because of Dom and my history together, and because we were already dating before Yellow Door was initiated, was brought into being, that Yellow Door's kind of become part of like the equation of our lives as well. Just like our family and our mates and even our own like personal partnership, they're all the building blocks of what our lives are together. So there's always a bit of give and take and some frustrating times and some good times. But Dom and I have certainly built a strong partnership, and the Yellow Door journey has been a part of what that partnership is. It's definitely not just like a supporting role. We both support each other in what we do. So that's that part. More practically, I try and remember to hang out the washing. Make dinner every now and again. Well, probably
Most
mostly.
nights.
And then just to try my best to be a sounding board for Dom, because she does the same for me, even though I'm much less likely to ask for the help than she is. And especially if she's facing like difficult circumstances at work, or sharing in her delight when you guys are successful, when you have a good client, or when you get a good win. For somebody who lives in the freelance life, even though I do sell my time to one company, there certainly is this element of always being on it. You know, there's an email coming in from a client at 7:00 in the evening, and you feel like because of the way that you do work and the way that you provide value and the way that you're competitive, you reply to that email almost immediately. You know, your turnaround times are super quick. But that means that you don't switch off at 5 like everybody else in a 9-to-5 job would. You know, you come home and take the dog for a walk, even though we do that anyway. There's that element of you switch off when you kind of go to bed. But Dom and I have tried recently to not take screens to the bedroom, just so that, you know, when you are in that space, you're going to read a book or
Talk.
Yeah, have a conversation. Although, you know, we quite capable of still having that conversation over whatever you're doing. Dom's also really good at working in front of the TV, which I cannot do. So we'll settle down to a series and I'll end
Mostly
up like
admin.
with square eyes, and Dom will have gotten like 3 hours of good work in. So I think it's certainly if one is a standard corporate office worker or works a 9 to 5, whatever industry you're in, and your partner is going out and deciding to start their own job, just be aware that once they start that, the only success that they're going to have is if they put their 100% in it. And in fact, if you put your 100% into it as well, because you're that support structure. So yeah, certainly there's an awareness of how much effort is required to start up one's own business. But you kind of make it work. And if you don't, then c'est la vie.
I know that from my side, I'm sure there are plenty of rants that he probably wouldn't want to hear, but has to, because has to be there to just listen to the rants, and always tries to give advice, and sometimes I don't want to hear it, but
yeah, look, it's challenging, but the most important thing is that you got to develop and continue going and still learn. I think I said earlier, you got to carry on learning, because if you think now that you've learned everything you need to know, then you've kind of really missed the boat.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think as much as Dom, sometimes you said you don't want to hear it, you know it's coming from a good place, and that Trish knows you and knows us well. So it's usually going to be good advice.
Yeah, I think it's always difficult to, as much as we do support each other in work and obviously in life, but it's difficult to hear something maybe that you don't agree with from someone you love, because you have to kind of take it and mull it over, and it is,
or just ignore it.
sometimes when it's necessary, but yeah, like you say, it does come from a good place, so you have to take it from where it comes.
I think one of the biggest challenges is to give advice knowing that it's just being asked for to prove yourself right. So Dom and I we'll have these conversations, but both of us together, and I would have asked her something or she would have asked me something, and I'll say, this is what I think you should do, but that really isn't what she wants to do anyway. So that's, it's a challenge to say, okay, cool, that's fine, but then we either support or we just agree to disagree, and just carry on that way.
Yeah. So knowing what you know about Yellow Door, where do you see us going in the next few years?
This wasn't part of my notes. On the spot. Look, I think that you guys have a solid base of clients at the moment, and there's certainly vision to expand. It's a difficult question for me to answer from a practical point of view, because obviously I just want to say you guys are going to go from strength to strength to strength. We don't know. We don't really know. You might find a cool opportunity. I know that you guys are always looking for opportunities. So what I can say with certainty is that Yellow Door will still be running, still operating, still having a good time, still taking Fridays off at 3.
We try anyway.
And Dom will probably still be working until 1 o'clock in the morning. But as long as you guys are operating, then that's where I think you guys should be in the next few years. Still, being fire starters and finding those cool clients to work for and finding new ways to do things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I think as long as we're adding value and feeling like we're growing in ourselves and our business, we will be on the right track. And then just kind of bringing it back to our listeners and what they might be going through, what are some of the things you think people should consider before starting a business? So maybe that's around, should I do this or not? Maybe it's practical, maybe it's more philosophical, anything that comes to mind.
I think that, and in this sense, it's kind of different, especially with Dom. And I'm not sure about you, Em. I'm not sure if you ever worked with anybody else before you started Get Polished in those in those years. But for me, there's always like this element of, am I doing something? Do I know how to do something properly? Do I have the experience to do it? So I think that it's really important to have put the hard yards in before you think that it's okay to go on your own. Because I think a lot of people get very frustrated with working for somebody else, and then they want to go blam. But I mean, we know how much of hard work it is. And then that's the next one, is just like put in the work, do it.
And like you said earlier, keep learning.
Yeah, absolutely, certainly. Never wake up in the morning and think that you know everything and better than anybody else, because somebody's going to teach you otherwise.
Yeah, we always talk about staying humble and having that balance between humble and hustling.
Yeah, for sure. No, yeah, absolutely. Hustling is it, especially here in South Africa. Maybe it's misplaced saying get experience and work for somebody else beforehand. I suppose everybody else has different experiences, and Dom's one of those as well. As you know, she's only really ever worked for herself.
Yeah, I think it absolutely depends on the person. I had worked with another agency and learnt both things I wanted to replicate and also things that I thought
could be better
or done differently. And I think it's interesting how often we've referenced that experience I had, even though it was quite a short window. And we've also brought in consultants who have had a lot more experience in other organizations.
Yeah,
so I think that's been a way for us to learn from them where our own experience has been more limited. Cool. Well, Tris, thank you so much.
No dramas.
Any closing comments or...
Should have come and done this earlier.
Yeah, it definitely took some bribery on my part, some coffees and lunches and nudges, but it's been really great to have you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 5 years.
Thanks, Tris.
Spot the trend. So today's Spot the Trend, I want to talk about voice search. So it's something that's come up more recently with a client that we've been working on their SEO, and voice search, to give you some background, is things like Alexa, Siri, Google Home, things that are bringing more voice activated searches into everyday life. So an interesting stat I heard was that by next year, mostly in the US, over 50% of searches will be made by voice. So that means people are pulling out their phone, asking Siri, where can I get the best insert product here? And asking their home voice search function, please can you find me a recipe for X or whatever. So it's interesting because it's changing the way we need to create content, because that content needs to be voice activated, which is very different to how we've always thought about content being read or watched. So yeah, what do you think of that? What are your thoughts?
So I think it's really interesting, and this is a question which maybe I should know the answer to, but I don't think you need the answer to be in voice. Is that correct? So the response can be a recipe that maybe, I'm interested to hear how it all links together. So you could ask for a recipe, but does that recipe need to be read out to you? Or can it say, this is a recipe we recommend, and it's on your iPad in front of you in the kitchen?
Yeah, I think it can be both. I think the way that people are bringing it into to the way we create content now is that they're just making it easier for Google or Apple to find the information. And that means making content shorter, easier to understand. And I know that you really already advocate for short, punchy sentences. So it's creating content that won't scare people off when it's read out.
Absolutely. So to the point. And also, I think it speaks back to something we always talk about, which is storytelling, is that sometimes you want the facts, but other times you actually want to get a feeling of something or resonate with it. And I think that is an interesting thing to approach with voice as opposed to text, to kind of see how people relate to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also something that's sort of counterintuitive in a way, because if you think about it, over the past few years, we've tried to make everything visual. So we brought, all these compelling imagery, videos, types of visual content into our social media content and our blogs. But this is kind of going back to the words, because you can't portray an image necessarily over the voice activated function.
And people's searches will probably lead to more podcasts.
Yep. Cool. Interesting discussion to carry on further.
Absolutely. And I think we always talk about keeping our approach agile and bringing in new technology and new ways of thinking. So it'll be exciting to see how it rolls out. Your questions answered. So Carol has asked us how far in advance we do financial projections and how we practically implement our strategy from there. So I'd love to tell you that we do them a year in advance, but we found that realistically 3 months is practical. Dom does our cash flow, which she does weekly, if not more often. And my role is more to look ahead and go, what business do we have in the pipeline? What are we likely to secure in the next month or quarter? And how much more new business do I need to look for or try and sort of finalize things we're pitching on. And I think it's such a fine balance, because we don't want to bring in too many projects at once and obviously then not have the capacity to service them, but we also need to keep cash flow in mind. And learning the difference between cash flow and profitability was a really good lesson early on in our business, and something we're very aware of. And in terms of how we roll that out, we are very meticulous about who works on what project. We have an amazing team of freelancers that we draw on when we are at capacity or need specialist skills, and I think that's been a saving grace for us, and that our capacity is flexible and we can adjust it to fit with what we need to do financially.
I think the financial side of the business is something that we don't talk about enough, and it's not as fun as the marketing side. And for me, the cash flow is it's such an important thing to have a handle on. And I've made it my mission to know exactly what's coming in and out of the bank account on almost a daily basis. Just to be aware of what's coming up, making sure that by the time it gets to the end of the month, when all those big payments are coming off, that the business is afloat. In these difficult times, politically difficult times and economically difficult, we have to be very cautious of letting that cash flow get out of hand. So that's an important part of our day-to-day. So another question that we've been asked, and also an important one, is when you're sitting in your 9-to-5 job and having thoughts of starting your own business, when do you know that it's the right time, or how do you figure out when the right time to move to your own business is? I think that this one is, you never really know. It's one of those things you kind of have to feel, but the important thing is to make sure that you have the right understanding of where you're going to be going and what that means for your pathway in life. Like if you have decided that this is where you are is not working for you, then you need to make the change and you need to decide how you're going to make those changes. And it might be a phased approach where you're working less time but still doing your side job, or you decide to cut your losses and change entirely in one go. That is all dependent on the situation. But it does make sense to look at your entire picture and see where you can actually figure out how to do this the best way.
And to make sure that you've got the financial backing or savings to do it without that kind of constant worry and know where your income's going to come from.
Yeah, so it's there's no easy answer. For us, it was a natural progression of we were in the right place at the right time, and I think hope for people that happens to them, because it is easier than having to make a big decision of changing. But yeah, it just depends on your situation.
And being ready for a change, I think that often is a big catalyst which motivates you to actually go out and do it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Life Behind the Yellow Door. We'd love to hear from you. So if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover, pop us a message via our social media pages @Hello Yellow Door, and we'll do our best to answer them in upcoming episodes.